So for those of you that have been watching my channel a while, you guys probably know that I am a huge slasher movie junkie. And I've always wanted to do more ranking videos. Even though they're not super popular on my channel, I always enjoy them whenever I do them. So I decided to do the Scream franchise. This is probably my favorite slasher franchise of the bunch just because of the way that it reverses and subverts the tropes of the genre. Each movie is a slasher movie combined with a whodunit, making the audience guess who the killer is. Instead of having a returning killer with new characters as fodder, we have a returning protagonist with a new killer that the audience has to guess the identity of. There'll be some kind of vague-ish spoilers for the series in this video, but I won't get into any specifics. I won't be revealing the identities of any of the killers, or anyone who dies, or anything like that. So yeah, let's not waste any more time. At number 4 is Scream 3. Now, I don't dislike this movie as much as other people do. I think it gets a lot more hate than it deserves. Sydney has a surprisingly solid character arc in this movie. It's the only movie in the franchise where she has a distinct arc from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. The relationship between Gale and Dewey is fun. The reveal of the killer is genuinely surprising, especially his motivation. I really like the way that this movie ties all three movies together to form a connected trilogy. But this movie definitely has its pitfalls. It has the worst script of the franchise by far. It's the only screenplay in the franchise not written by Kevin Williamson. It's slow-paced, choppy, has a lot of kind of awkward dialogue, and just overall feels off. There's way too much exploration into Maureen Prescott, a character that, we knew about but we didn't really care about and we didn't really need a backstory for. This movie also has the least memorable characters of the franchise. There's way too many and they all just feel like fodder for death scenes. Carrie Fisher's cameo is pretty cool though. Coming in at third place is Scream 4. This one actually used to be my least favorite of the bunch, but upon rewatch, I liked it more than I expected. It has a pretty solid new cast with some pretty famous people playing relatively minor roles. Sydney finishes her series-long character arc and becomes a maternal figure to the new characters. She's moved past the trauma of the previous movies and has now decided to help others move past their own trauma. This movie is surprisingly clever in the way that it avoids being a generic slasher sequel. It has some interesting commentary on the power and influence that social media can have. There are a couple downsides. The blood in this movie looks very, very fake. It's way too dark. It looks like tar at times. The ending of this movie is a bit clunky. I won't spoil anything, but the killer's plan essentially goes out the window once the final set piece arrives. So while it has some flaws, it's overall a welcome return to form for the franchise. At number 2 is Scream 2. This movie is surprisingly good for a movie that was rushed into production so fast after the first one. And it really shows the advantage that having a single director and a single writer with a singular vision for a movie and its sequel can have. There's some pretty memorable new characters like Derek and Hallie. There's a really good soundtrack. We get to see Sydney Prescott emerge as the badass final girl. There's some excellent Wes Craven suspense. He was a master at creating scenes that shouldn't really be suspenseful but really are. I feel like this movie is also a bit more thematically rich than the previous ones. It explores how violence in cinema does not actually cause people to be violent in real life. There are a couple pitfalls to it. Liev Schreiber's character feels a bit mishandled. He has a character arc that's very clearly set up but is not executed. There are some moments of contrivance, like Ghostface taking out 2 trained police officers. And there's a plotline that goes nowhere about the killer attacking people that have similar names to the characters of the first movie. Overall though, this is one of the best slasher movie sequels of all time. I'd put it up there with Halloween 2, Dream Warriors, Child's Play 2, and all the rest. But of course, coming in at number 1 is Scream. This movie introduced the self-aware horror trend that dominated the late 90s. There's some very fleshed out memorable characters like Sydney, Gale, Dewey, Randy. This movie has some of my favorite movie scenes ever. The opening scene is one of the best opening scenes in any horror movie. And the scene where Randy explains the rules to surviving a horror movie is one of the most clever scenes in a movie ever. Wes Craven's direction in this movie is fantastic. He balances humor with suspense perfectly. There's a massively underrated score by Marco Beltrami. This movie does have a couple flaws. There's some kind of unlikable characters. The scene by the fountain paints every single character in that scene as a complete and utter douchebag. There's some scenes that don't really add up. Like, why is Ghostface following Sydney around in the middle of broad daylight? And this movie has probably the most predictable twist at the end once it's revealed who the killer actually is and what their motivation is. It's something that I feel like most audience members would be able to guess. That being said, this is one of the best movies of the 90s, one of my favorite movies ever, one of the best horror movies ever made, one of the most clever, subversive horror movies ever made. They just don't make them like they used to. So yeah, that's it. That's my ranking. It's pretty standard. I feel like most fans would rank the movies this way, but it's still worth doing a video on. How would you guys rank the Scream movies? Let me know down in the comments below. What's your favorite scary movie or scary movie franchise? Also, leave some suggestions as to what other horror franchises I should rank. I've done Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, and now this, but I'm 100% down to doing Friday the 13th, Psycho, Child's Play, Texas Chainsaw, any of the other ones. So yeah, as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate all the support you guys give this channel. Be sure to tap that subscribe button. Bye.